Welcome to another episode of Culture Cast with Dustin Homan. Dustin's going to be talking with Ryan Vonderhaar. He's the Education Abroad Coordinator at the Ohio State University. And we are going to learn a lot about Dominican Republic and some things about Costa Rica, so stay tuned. Dustin, it is a pleasure to always be involved with your Culture Cast program. And it's my understanding that you have a really great guest who's going to be educating us about many different things.
Yeah, we do, Patrick. And thanks again for having me. Thanks to all of our Culture Cast viewers. If you've been here before, we appreciate your loyal patronage. If this is your first time, this is a great time to plug in because we've got a very special guest, Ryan Vonderhaar, the Education Abroad Coordinator in the College of Food, Agriculture, and Environmental Sciences at The Ohio State University. Ryan, first of all, thank you for being here. Welcome. And tell the viewers a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Dustin, thank you for having me. Excited to be here on the Culture Cast. Yeah, I grew up in Preble County, Ohio. Love Dustin's connection to 4-H because I was an avid 4-H member growing up on my family's farm in Preble County. Raised cattle and sheep and pigs a couple years, and obviously the county fair was an annual part of my experience growing up, and then was a proud member of the Talawanda Butler Tech FFA chapter down in Oxford, Ohio when I got into high school, and kind of grew up an Ohio State fan. One thing I like to remember is when YouTube started being a big thing. One of the first videos I remember ever watching growing up on YouTube was my dad having my brother and I watch videos of the fight song and the marching band and kind of Carmen, Ohio. So yeah, grew up an Ohio State fan. Kind of parlayed being a fan into what I wanted to do. Came to school here after high school, started school here at Ohio State. Agricultural communication was my major, so I'm a graduate of our Agricultural Communication, Education, and Leadership Department here at Ohio State within the College of Food, Agricultural, and Environmental Sciences. Had a job after I graduated in spring 2018 working for a student organization I was involved in at Farmhouse International Fraternity, and now since June, I've started here as the Education Abroad Coordinator here at Ohio State, working with the Director of Education Abroad for CFAES, Dr. Kelly Newland, who was on the show, I believe, a few weeks ago. So now I'm here. I'm back in Columbus. Excited to be working in education abroad. It's a topic that I'm definitely passionate about. In my spare time, still a big Ohio State sports fan. Love going to the football games here when it's home and try to catch some away games. I also, as a hobby of mine, record a podcast. It's called the Silver Bullet Saga. It's located on Apple Podcast on iTunes. If anybody's interested, please listen and let me know what you think. I'm also, you're going to think that I'm just a sports guy. It's part of my life, but another one of my hobbies is I'm a ice crew member for the Columbus Blue Jackets. So if you ever go to a Blue Jackets game here in Columbus, you'll see me on the ice during the periods with a big snowplow shovel cleaning off the ice during the game. So those are a couple things I do for fun, but my full-time job is working here in education abroad within the College of Food, Agricultural, and Environmental Sciences.
You are a man of many talents. I didn't know the piece about the Blue Jackets, so I'm glad that you shared that. It's just really, I always enjoy hearing what people get paid to do and the joy that they find in that, and things that they do that are not paid and the joy that they find in that as well. So thanks for sharing that with us, Ryan. I do want to say, Culture Cast viewers, if you could please stay with us until the end and then go check out Ryan's podcast, that would be great, because Ryan and I were just talking about some breaking football news that came out yesterday, and I know I'm itching to get on to hear a little bit about his podcast. But let's dig into what we're going to talk about today. Ryan has a really unique position, and with his previous role at Ohio State, he had the opportunity to go on an education abroad trip, and now he gets to coordinate those. So we're going to talk a little bit about one of those trips that he went on to the Dominican Republic as a student. And then we're going to, if time allows, and hopefully it will, we're going to transition to talking about some of the trips that he gets to coordinate and recruit for, and hopefully get to go on, which I think is just such a cool perk of your job. So Ryan, let's dig into the Dominican Republic. It's a country that you had the opportunity to visit, and Sarah, if you'll show the first photo, it's a map of the Dominican Republic. Many people in the here in the U.S. probably familiar with it, if not because it's a tourist destination, but also because it's relatively close. So you'll see Florida peeking out of the top of the screen there, and the Dominican Republic is highlighted in red. As we always like to do on this show, we like to show the country's flag as well. So that's the next photo. The Dominican Republic, just a little bit of background on the country. It's about twice the size of New Jersey, so a smaller country. And the population is just a little bit smaller than that of the state of Ohio. Some of its major industries are the service industry, as I alluded to earlier, which includes tourism and construction. And it is said that the Dominican Republic was also one of the first stops during Christopher Columbus's voyage in 1492 to the New World. So a little bit of background and history on the Dominican Republic. Let's dig into your photos. Ryan, tell us first of all, tell us about the trip and the theme of the trip and why you chose to go.
Sure, of course. The program traveled in December, which is a pretty unique and good time as an undergraduate student to be able to travel, as well as a unique experience as being someone from Ohio, kind of seeing the weather, like even something as simple as the weather, what it's like, so different and so close to the equator down there in the Dominican. The program was focused on sustainability and renewable energy. So, but there was also quite a bit of focus just on the culture of the country. Our in-country host was a native to the Dominican Republic. So we got to hear about all kinds of pieces of community development, and there was a service aspect to the program. We got to see kind of renewable energy and sustainability through the eyes of government and how that's kind of handled and what lens that's kind of looked upon in another country. I mean, I had a terrific experience on the program, and definitely led me to being interested in the role that I'm in now, is helping other folks find their education abroad or their international opportunity while they're in school. So definitely something I'm passionate about, and the trip was just a springboard for me to kind of learn about a totally different, a totally another culture, new ways of thinking, new people. So there are definitely a lot of positives to the program, and I'm kind of excited to relive some of the memories through the pictures. I traveled in December of 2017, so just a couple of years back now, but definitely an impactful program. And our Dominican Republic program through the college at that point was pretty short by any stretch of what folks maybe naturally think of when they think of education abroad opportunities. I was in the country for right around 10 days. Now, I'll say the benefit of a short program like that is that your days are so focused on getting as much out of every part of them as you can, that it really lends itself to you being very intentional with your time and intentional with kind of the effort you put into the conversations you have with the locals, with the folks who are hosting you, kind of the energy you bring to any of the activities you have, and the impact that you want the experience to have on yourself during such a focused time. So, yeah, pretty unique experience. That was probably more than you asked for, but
No. I really appreciate the piece that you shared about in terms of your career development. And we always try to highlight on the show, especially for our young viewers, the importance of going on trips, specifically education abroad, because it's a little bit more structured and focused, but any trip outside of the U.S. and the skills and the talents, the abilities that you're able to learn there to apply. But for you especially, as you hit on, this trip helped to directly impact your career and what you're doing now. So I appreciate you highlighting that. And I think that's a really important piece. Let's dig into some of these photos, because you have some great photos that you took, Ryan. So tell us a little bit about what we see here.
Sure. So this was on day one of our first full day of the program. We took a walking tour of the Dominican Republic's capital, Santo Domingo, which is where we stayed for for a majority of the program. And in this walking tour, we got to see quite a few cultural landmarks of the city, and really see what to me was surprising of, this was you want to think about, colonial America, or even really how the U.S. Was founded or came to be. And you mentioned Christopher Columbus's first stop. This is a very old city that folks maybe don't realize that when you think about the Dominican Republic. But Santo Domingo was a launch pad for the Catholic Church to bring their mission into the U.S. So many of these, you want to call them ruins, but these huge stone-made cathedrals and pieces of castles and just different monasteries, just beautiful. Especially when you think about the age, like this structure that's here is several hundred years old, 300 years old. And the reason that so much of this, or not the reason, but the reason that there was so many of these large structures was this European influence that came in with kind of this idea of needing to make a home base in order to spread the Catholic religion. And I really liked thinking about it in that lens, because you look at how many unique structures were there during our visit in Santo Domingo. So this picture was just one of the first churches that we'd walked through. And I had a bunch of pictures like it, but I really like this one just because you just see the majesty of kind of how huge that gateway was into that building. But that was much of that.
In relation to the people that are in that photo, it really shows that perspective as well. So I'm glad you brought up that point, Ryan. I was reading about that when I was doing a little background on the country, that the Dominican Republic was really used, as you said, I think, as kind of a launching pad or a point to spread Catholicism, but also for explorers to explore into other countries. So, Christopher Columbus and others, when they came here, their first stop wasn't in the U.S. It was some of these countries that then enabled them to continue exploring into other parts of the New World. So I appreciate you highlighting that. Let's dig into some more of these photos. So you see some architecture here as well that Ryan was mentioning. Let's go to the next photo. Want to dig in here. We're filming this in November. I don't know about you, Ryan. I'm already listening to Christmas music. So tell us a little bit about what this season was like when you were down there in December.
Sure. So this was about when I took this picture. This was about 10 days before Christmas, right there in mid-December. And I, as an Ohioan, was blown away by, I mentioned it before, but the weather, when you're there, is nothing like the weather it is here in December. You're much closer to the equator, so much warmer, obviously, during this time of the year. But as we walked around on our city tour during the beginning of the program, we got to see, for me, like some pretty eye-opening just pieces of the ways that folks around the world celebrate holidays that we take as so normal to our culture here in the U.S. But yeah, obviously this is a nativity scene. It was set up in another church, an active church that we walked through during that day. But I took a picture of this because it was really consistent with many of kind of the exhibits and many of just the real life of Christmas being celebrated in Santo Domingo. The nativity scene obviously is something that we see quite a bit here in the U.S., but some of the more unique things of being in a climate like that, there was buildings with the whole flat side of the outward side of the building with these giant Christmas tree ornaments that were just, they were 6 feet wide, and it decorated the side of the building. These sculptures to make the building look like a Christmas tree, which is it's just very unique to walk around in such beautiful weather and just kind of see the way that other folks, because really, you know what, the reason that we know or we think of Christmas with having cold weather is because that's where we live, you know, in our part of the world. So it's pretty unique to be able to see the way folks decorate, the way folks celebrate.
Hey, just a quick question, Ryan. Is the Dominican Republic primarily Christian-based faiths, or are there a lot of different religions there?
Sure. I would say a lot like the U.S. Here. You know, we might say that the U.S. is a, you know, quote unquote Christian-based country. If you want to think about who the majority of the folks that are practicing religion, like what they're practicing, I would say the same is probably true for the Dominican. I'm obviously not an expert on that, but there's definitely different religions that are practiced throughout the country, and kind of where you're at can help depict exactly what's happening. But I would definitely draw back to Catholicism and just the reach that it had on the country, and you still see a lot of remnants from that. And as you walk the streets and as you visit the people, it's still a big part of the culture, and that's why you see like a big open nativity scene like that's displayed in that picture. So yeah, I hope that answers your question partly, but I would say there's definitely a mix.
Ryan, you mentioned before the telecast started that in terms related to the weather, that there were also some remnants of maybe the weather experienced in Ohio that you saw down there as well, even if it was man-made, correct? Can you tell us
just about like that? We'll buy, you know, folks who are decorating inside their house will buy the, you know, fake snow spray to decorate with. You'd see the same thing down there, and you know they're not getting snow really at all. Sometimes we'll mask it up here by, you know, obviously snow's pretty, but putting it on a tree to help decorate. But they do the same thing down there. So obviously some of the culture does cross. Regions.
And I'm sure many of them have probably never seen snow. There's not been snow in the Dominican Republic, but there's still that cultural tie of snow to Christmas time. So let's get into your food photos. These are always some of my favorite. And I think the first photo, we have the prep here, I assume, right, Ryan?
Yes.
Tell us about this.
So this was one of we got to visit a local farm home. It was outside the city of Santo Domingo. But that's my good friend, Wyatt Jones, on the other side of this pig stick. That's a pig being roasted over an open coal oven. So you got concrete on either side, that, and then hot coals there at the bottom that are being stoked. And just kind of a fun part of the program was we got to take turns spending dinner pretty much on the stove, that pig being roasted over the flame. But yeah, so I think there might even be a picture after this that has a picture of, there it is. So there's the pork. So we got to help pull the pork and help with our meal, and kind of, obviously this was because we were visiting, this was a big meal that they prepared to kind of celebrate and show what maybe one of their cultural or just celebration meals might be. So obviously they're not going to roast a whole pig every day, but that was something that we got to take part in with them and kind of enjoy each other's company. And,
would you tell us a little bit about the sides that we see there with the meat?
Man, you're really going to quiz me here. So I'm taking a look here. So we've got some fruit there at the bottom. I think that those were some just mixed tropical fruits. So that, you know, just like a fruit salad that we would have here. But there was definitely a starch piece there on the right side. I believe that was like a rice or I'm gonna mix the word up, but there's a word for just like a rice and bean combination that they served with almost every meal. And then I'm trying to see what I'm looking at the picture. I kind of got a low grade photo on this side, so I'm trying to see what else is in there. But if you see something you recognize,
but it sounds like you mentioned the rice piece, so that was pretty standard.
Oh yeah, definitely. Almost every meal, some kind of rice and bean component, which is going to be pretty common with many of the countries in that area.
And fruit? Is there fresh fruit?
Definitely fresh fruit. Almost every meal, some kind of fruit component. Another thing, it's not in the picture there, but every time we sat down to eat, or at least almost every time, we were going to have a little coffee. I mean, just like a little, we call it an espresso cup here, but they love coffee, and it would be, we always say cream and sugar before, asking for cream and sugar if we want it before it gets to the table, but there, the coffee was already sweetened with sugar, so you didn't add your own. Everybody kind of took it the same way. So that was also pretty cool.
That's interesting. So it's kind of the flip here. Like you would have to say no sugar.
Yes.
Right. Versus when you go here, people ask if you want sugar.
In many of the cases, there wasn't an option. Like it was coming right out of the pot with sugar in it. So.
Wow.
Just a quick question on your agricultural crops.
Sure.
Is there a lot of farming at Dominican Republic?
Oh yeah, and that was a piece of the program as well. We visited one of their big exports is coffee, obviously, but one of a couple of the places we visited were coffee plantations, so we got to see how it was being grown. We got to, and I think we might have some pictures of it, but there was some roasting facilities and some bagging facilities. But yeah, coffee was a huge part of their agricultural economy from what we were visiting. One of the, just to go into an aside, one of the pieces that they always talked about was the amount that farmers were making off of the coffee was just a percentage of what it could be if they were allowed, or if what they were exporting was a processed good instead of a raw good. So most of the coffee that we import as the U.S. from the Dominican Republic is just raw beans, and then the folks that our big coffee companies here, Folgers, what have you, are roasting it and processing it on their side. So really, the farmers who are making the coffee in the Dominican are, if they could have it their way, some of them who have the ability to would rather process it on their own and then sell a finished product, just to kind of up their margin of profit.
Adding value added is what you're saying there to that piece. Sarah, I'd like to fast forward to some of the nature scenes because I think they're just so beautiful. Tell us a little bit about some of the stuff that you got to do, Ryan.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Big part of it was just seeing the natural beauty that was in the Dominican Republic. So this was actually a Japanese garden. It was a public park. The theme was this Japanese garden. So we got to take this little train trolley through the park and just explore kind of what their take was on harnessing their own natural beauty in the country. So there's a lake and you see the shrub around it and just some amazing trees with, it's such a temperate climate there that they can grow quite a bit. So it lends itself to being just an absolutely beautiful place.
You'll show another. Yes, this is the one.
Sure. Oh, I love it. This is my favorite picture. So this was in the center of the country. It has this place. It's this place, Jarabacoa. And for the folks that live now, folks here in the U.S. that visit the Dominican Republic know it for the beaches. Everybody loves going to the beaches in the country. But the folks in the Dominican Republic, where they like to vacation, if they're vacationing in country, is a place like here in Jarabacoa. And it's just absolutely beautiful. You think of it as like Colorado here in the U.S., where there's some hill and mountain ranges, but then you have these beautiful rivers that this resort that we stayed in for the last day of our program, this resort was built over this river. So you could actually have coffee out on this bridge that had this rushing white water over it. And I think that there's I'm not sure if we have it in the slide as well, but there's a picture with us with helmets and life jackets on. We actually got to go, there it is. We got to do some rafting on the program with one of their companies that was, and it was also a way to see kind of way they were harnessing their natural environment to do a little bit of sustainable tourism with the rafting. So yeah, I absolutely love these pictures. Jarabacoa is a place close to my heart. I'd love to get back there sometime, but it was a lot of fun.
Sarah, there is a photo of Ryan with a guitar. I think this will be a good photo for us to kind of wrap up and summarize the Dominican Republic. So tell us about this photo, Ryan.
So this is in Santo Domingo. This is, I believe, the last day of the program before we flew out the next day. And me and my buddy Wyatt, I mentioned before, we had done a little bit of just window shop, and we walked around. They have a little tourist district, so both of us were bringing gifts back for some significant others back home. So we were doing a little shopping that day, and I had met this guy a couple of days before, and he same time. It was like 4 o'clock in the afternoon. He's out playing guitar, just having fun, and with his sister, who was playing the guitar that I actually had. And I walked up and just, introduced myself again. He remembered me and just asked if he cared if I played along with him. And he ended up saying, well, why don't you play a song? So we ended up, there's one song that I know by heart. It's the reason I know how to play guitar. And this is probably the same for a lot of folks my age. But Wagon Wheel is a very easy song to play, my old Crow Medicine show. And I started picking the song, and he, just so talented as he was on the guitar, he started picking along with me. And without, there was a language barrier between us, but he was able to play the same song, and just awesome. I got a video from it. My buddy Wyatt took a video for me, and just definitely a great memory of mine on the program.
Ryan, tell the viewers, why should they visit the Dominican Republic?
Sure. For me, the people were so welcoming, and just the culture there, at least with the folks that I interacted with, was one of community. There was a lot of folks that just were helping each other out, especially when we got into the agricultural areas, and kind of talking through the way people live was they're trying to help each other out, and that was a theme that I saw for a lot of the programs. So that the picture that was just shown of the guitars was actually used in a campaign 2 years ago with Ohio State. That was this Buckeye Love campaign, and the idea of the campaign was just showing just the way people love each other in just different ways that's shown. And I love that video because I'm a big music person myself, but just the way that music can kind of transcend even language barriers and bring people together. So just in my opinion, it was a very loving culture, and just a terrific place to visit. I'd recommend it to anyone.
And Ryan, before we close up, in about 30 seconds, I want to give you some time to plug the Costa Rica trip.
Yes.
That's upcoming. And if we have students that are on this telecast, maybe they'd be interested in going in the future. So tell us about it.
Sure. We have a Costa Rica Sustainable Service Learning Program that travels every spring. It travels over spring break. A guy I work with here in Agricultural Administration Building, Paul Heimberger, has been leading the program for about 10 years now, and I will be co-leading the program with him this spring. The focus of the program is sustainability, so we're going to be visiting a university in Costa Rica called Earth University that hosts students from all around the world to come and learn about sustainable practices that are being focused in Costa Rica. It's an amazing country. It has 18%. It's a pretty small country. It's about the size of West Virginia landmass wise, but it has 18% of the entire world's biodiversity. So you think about plants and animals that are unique to a region. Costa Rica is one of the most amazing places you can go for the kind of the content you're getting per capita for what you're visiting.
Well, I don't know about you, Patrick, but I'd sign me up. So I'm ready to go to Costa Rica.
That's one of the things that I like about CultureCast is it shows you what countries we miss going to. And that
Absolutely.
Dominican Republic is one that I think all of us should go to. Dustin, it's always a pleasure having you bring on interesting guests like Ryan Vonderhaar, and I thank you.
Patrick, I thank you. Dwayne, Sarah, thank you for your work behind the scenes. And Ryan, thank you so much for joining us. The time has flew by. I wish we could have taken longer to get through more of your photos, but you are inspiring. And if after watching this, I hope people feel inspired to want to get out of their comfort zone and to explore this beautiful world that we live in. So thank you, Ryan. Thank you to our viewers. And until next time, we'll see you soon.